if you're the kind of guy who wants Storm Raider Surge, you are someone who wants to stay in combat for quite a few seconds, but still is a pretty high damage champion. And the thing is, this actually covers a pretty wide variety of champions. This is actually very good mastery for Olaf, for example, because Olaf can get the damage output. It's not too hard for him, and he really, really wants the movement speed. This is nice for Nocturne. It's very easy to get the damage out, and he really wants to stick to his target. It's really important for him. This is also pretty good for champions like Ryze or Vladimir or even Victor, who can certainly do enough damage, but they really care about staying in range because a lot of their abilities are short-range non-skill shots, and they need to be able to click on you, and they need to be able to navigate the teamfight in order to do so. The number of champions who actually can make good use of Storm Raider Surge is actually quite wide. Do I do a fairly high amount of damage in a short time frame, and do I really care about in-fight mobility? If you answer yes to those questions, you might really want Storm Raider Surge. Who are you if you want Thunderlord's Decree? Pretty much anyone. Thunderlord's Decree is very easy to trigger. Everyone's going to land auto attacks. Everyone's going to land spells. Thunderlord's Decree is the general catch-all for nothing seems to really strike my fancy. I'll just go Thunderlords. The nice thing about Thunderlords, and especially comparing it to something like, we'll say Deathfire Touch, being another spell-activated keystone, is that Thunderlord's Decree comes up pretty quickly and is very bursty. If you're playing Orianna and you QRW somebody and then land an auto attack and then walk away, you're getting about 2.5 seconds of Deathfire Touch. Turns on, you landed all your abilities, and you backed out. And so you did 8 plus 25% of your ability power, cut in half. So you're doing 4 plus like 12% of your AP. That sucks. That's really low. Because if you're bursty, what else are you going to do with Deathfire Touch? You need to hit another spell. And you can't because you landed your burst. But if you're playing Orianna, you do it again, well, you get that same 10% AP ratio. Okay, that's kind of crap. But instead of that crappy 4 base damage, you're getting between 10 and 180 base damage. That seems higher. But even though I lost a 2 or 3% AP ratio, I gained 100 damage. Well, unless I have 500 AP, 5,000 AP, pretty sure I want the Thunderlords. Okay, problem solved. If you're a bursty mage, Thunderlord's Decree is easily your best keystone for damage. You still have to decide, generally speaking, if you can trigger Thunderlords, you can probably trigger Storm Raider Surge. Which do you care about more? And I actually think Storm Raider Surge is slightly underrepresented. Not massively, but I think there's a lot of people who have shied away from Storm Raider Surge that shouldn't. Windspeaker's Blessing, who picks this up? Shielding, range supports. Pretty much period. It's not a super hard one to debate. You're playing Nami, you're playing Karma, I would argue so. Sona, debatable. Soraka, 100%. Janna, 100%. Lulu, debatable. Okay, next up is the choice between, if you're getting one of these keystones, it means you must be getting one of these. Precision, it's a bunch of lethality, which is essentially armor penetration and magic penetration. Or it's cooldown reduction and increased cooldown reduction cap. Now for most of the game, this just simply means 5% more cooldown reduction, which is very good. Basically, you just say, what's my goal? Is my goal to deal damage to people? Or is my goal to cast spells that don't deal damage? Generally speaking, if you are a damage-focused champion, Precision will grant you more total damage than Intelligence will. Even if you're casting roughly 5% more spells, this will give you roughly 5% more damage. And damage all at once is better than damage over time. If it's the same amount of damage, you want it all at once, almost always. Precision is just simply better for a lot of those cases. I will show you guys the actual numbers you'll get out of it. You can see that you're getting 3 plus 0.3 per level, so a level let's say 10 champion, is getting 6 magic pen. Now, no, that's not a ton. A level 10 champion gets 6 magic pen out of this. 6. That can only ever be up to 6% more damage, and in the vast majority of cases, that will never be 6% more damage. So you can start to see where it becomes a bit debatable. If you don't have any other magic pen in the kit, or you're not going to buy any other magic pen in the build, I mean, you're really not getting that much out of precision, to be completely honest. It is an increase, to be fair. You're getting more damage, and hey, it's going to stack against Thunderlord's Decree because it looks like magic pen's pretty good when you do magic damage with things, but it's not actually insane. It is helpful and it is good, but this is the kind of keystone you want, or this kind of mastery you're going to want if you are already getting a bunch of armor or magic penetration. And to be fair, you're still kind of succumbing to, am I getting Thunderlord's Decree or am I getting Stormreader's Surge? Now the nice thing is, this kind of champion who wants these keystones lines up really well. And if you're kind of the person who wants Windspeaker's Blessing, you are almost certainly the kind of champion who wants intelligence. All right. So those are locked up by getting a keystone. Now, what about splashing into Cunning? What if you're going to go 12 points in because your keystone's somewhere else? Or you are a Cunning keystone user, but you want to, you've got to go back up the tree. Well, you've got Greenfather's Gift. This is a new keystone from the 2017 season. Stepping into brush causes your next damaging attack or ability to deal 3% of your target's current health as bonus magic damage, and the cooldown is only 9 seconds. This keystone works in the jungle, and it is a big deal that it does. This helps you clear faster, and you can sometimes get it to happen twice per camp. That's not a big deal. It happens second time at a camp because that late into the camp it's probably already very low, but it will let you kind of burst it down at the start. This is also quite nice, and this is the debate. If you are a good poking support, this works on spells as well as auto attacks. Now the funny thing is, if you're doing like a Vel'Koz E, it will hit the minions first. If you're doing a Brand W, I'm actually not sure which one is going to trigger on, but it might hit the minions. It is very easy to waste Greenfather's Gift in lane, because as soon as you have to last hit, it's on cooldown again. Of course, Greenfather's Gift does stack with Fresh Blood. It's going to feel real good landing its auto attack pokes, and yes, this will help you push people out of lane. Absolutely. And if you're playing something like Teemo, or something like any sort of ranged top champion, yeah, you're probably going to want this. Ranged mid laner? Almost definitely not, because you're not going to step into brush. Jungler? Almost definitely do want this. Every gank, you're going to walk into lane, and you're going to hit somebody and do 3% of their current health. This is an amazing jungle mastery. And in fact, I think every jungler in League of Legends should heavily consider going at least 12 points in Cunning just for this, because it's very good. Now, there's other very good 12-pointers as well, but it is really up there and really makes you consider pulling your attention up here. It helps your jungle clear, helps your ganks, and if you're a ranged top laner or potentially a ranged support, you might want this. Now, for support, it's battling Bandit, and Bandit is worth quite a lot of gold. This is worth about 10 gold per minute, which doesn't seem amazing, I understand, but it does mean it's worth 300 gold by the end of the game, which actually is pretty good. It's not hard to land auto attacks, and what's funny is it's almost better on melee supports than range supports, which sounds weird, but it's actually kind of true. It's very good on melee supports if you're against another melee support, because you will brawl a fair bit. If for whatever reason you're playing support Poppy, your buckler toss counts. If you're playing Gangplank, just in general, you're probably just gonna go Bandit because Parlay counts and it gives you 10 gold. I believe if you're playing Jace and you attack in ranged form and then swap to melee form before the projectile hits, you'll get 10 gold. Same for Nidalee, same for Elise. That's a bit of a stretch for why you'd want to do this, especially because Nidalee and Elise are junglers anyway and want Greenfather's Gift, but it's there. And if you're playing Jace, you probably just want to get Greenfather's gift, to be completely honest, but it's there. Um, but basically, Bandit, in my opinion, is an automatic pickup on all supports in League of Legends. I think 99% of the time, if you are playing support, you are bringing Bandit. And even though Greenfather's gift feels good, I think you're probably still going to go Bandit. That's my theory on it. That could be wrong. In a few months, we might look back and go, that was silly. Bandit's not worth it. Greenfather's gift is insane. And that might be true. Keep in mind, though, if you are pushed into your turret, you cannot use Greenfather's gift. You can only use Greenfather's gift if you have lane control. If you are under your turret, there are no brushes to walk to, and you cannot use it. So keep in mind, this is not as easy to use as something like Fresh Blood. You have to have access to brush, which again means no mid laners. And think long and hard about using this as a support. And finally, Dangerous Game. Now, Dangerous Game, it's just good. If you get into a team fight, you'll heal during the middle of a team fight if enemies start dying. This is not the reason you'd go into Cunning, to be honest. Realistically, it's actually the lesser, like one of the least impressive of the 12-point Cunning group Masteries, in a sense. So that's kind of all I can say. Dangerous Game didn't change since the previous season. It's not bad. To be honest, it's actually pretty worthwhile to grab. There was a time in 2016 that I would run Bandit on Marksman. And it basically said, look, if I miss CS, I get 1 gold. If I harass you, I get 3 gold. And I would get several hundred gold over the course of the game. Like, even though I'm last hitting pretty well, I'm Diamond, I would last hit pretty reasonably well. This would earn me several hundred gold. But Dangerous Game, I just think, has a bit more payoff if you're not getting full value out of Bandit. And that's how I kind of feel about this. Now I want to bring up Merciless Meditation. So Merciless, if you cap it, you do 5% bonus damage to champions below 40% health. So if your opponents are low, you do more damage to them. This is a good mastery. This is good. This is quite good. Specifically, it is only to champions. This does not help you clear the jungle or last hit minions any better. Also keep in mind, generally speaking, enemy champions do not want to stay at 40% health or lower. Generally speaking, there's a lot of things that nerf this mastery that you wouldn't initially think of. For example, if you're a damage dealer, thus you're bringing Merciless, you're probably doing damage at the beginning of a fight. And you're blowing all of your major cooldowns at the beginning of a fight. Guess which button Miss Fortune presses when everyone's at full health? R. She hits bullet time and hits everybody for several thousand damage. Almost none of that damage will be triggered with Merciless. Now, if you're playing Syndra, okay, yes, you might one-shot them, and the back half of your ultimate will be triggered by Merciless. And if you're playing if you're the kind of champion who can actually fully kill a champion by yourself, or you are doing execute damage, you're playing like a Riven, you're playing, a Lee Sin with quite a bit of damage, if you're playing Elise, things that are going to try to get killing blows, then you're going to use Merciless quite a lot. But keep in mind, if you're playing this is going to sound silly, but AP Malphite, you're bursting full health targets with most of your damage, and you don't really know if it's going to get them low enough to matter. And now you're on cooldown with everything. Right? If you're playing Vayne or something or any other sort of typical marksman, you're hitting full health targets for a lot of the time. And the thing is, good players will say, "Oh, I'm low," and they'll run away. Like, keep in mind, any target at 5% health is already dead to your next spell or auto attack. So it doesn't affect champions at 5% health, and it doesn't affect champions at 41% health, and everyone starts every fight at 100% health. This mastery is, in effect, much, much less than 40% of the time in fights. This is not to say that it's bad, but it is to make you realize that it is not in effect nearly as often as you might think. It is not good enough to make you go Cunning, is what I want to kind of bring up. It's good. it's good. I like the Mastery. It feels good to bring in, and there's some gameplay around it. If you're ever on the receiving end of taking damage, you want to make sure you stay above 1/3 health because you don't want to be triggered by Merciless and take bonus damage. Like, there's gameplay to be had here, to be clear, right? If you're playing Twitch and you're saving Expunge, you want to make sure they get down below 1/3 from your auto attacks before you hit E because you'll do more damage that way. That's relevant. That's an important thing to note. You know, there's some real things to consider there. That there are occasionally points of cooldown juggling that will change your decision making. But just realize that the actual power of this Mastery is not quite as high as you might expect. Now, I've been sitting here with 4 points in Merciless and 1 point in Meditation for a while, and why is that? Well, it's the same reason I had 1 point over in Vampirism a while back. A little bit of regen goes a long way. It really, really does, especially ever since the mid-season 2016 changes where most mana regeneration went off of items and became flat mana instead. Rod of Ages, Morellonomicon, things like this just give a lot of raw mana. They have other points of regen in them too, but it's a lot of raw mana. Just adding a little bit goes a long way. So every minute, this triggers 12 times, right? Yes, every minute this triggers 12 times. So roughly every minute, you're getting 3.6% of your missing mana back. You know, so if you have 1,000 mana, you're getting 36 mana. Okay, it's not a ton, obviously, but it's every minute, and it adds up. And again, these numbers are going to feel very small, and I understand that. I realize that when I'm talking about the life you're getting from Vampirism, when I was talking about the Ferocity Tree, and the man you're getting from Meditation, the numbers by themselves do not sound impressive, and I understand that. But it really is, in the long run, a meaningful amount of addition. And one of the main reasons why is something like Meditation and something like Feast and something like Fresh Blood is they work during the laning phase. The laning phase is the single biggest contributor to your individual success. If you had a keystone that only ever came into effect at 35 minutes or later, then it does literally nothing in half the games you ever play. The game doesn't even get that far. No matter how strong it is, it means nothing in half of your games. And even then, even the games that do go that long, and the keystone does start to matter, the mastery does start to matter, if it only kicks in at 35 minutes, even the games that aren't literally over, another half of those are probably already decided, or decided enough to where a mastery couldn't possibly be powerful enough to change that perception. So I really think that it's important to understand that masteries that affect the laning phase are very, very good. To summarize, almost everyone is going to go 4 points at least into Merciless if they're some kind of a laner and they're going into Cunning. Not everyone goes into Cunning, but if you're someone who goes into Cunning, you're probably getting points into Merciless. This, of course, does not affect energy. It's only mana, so if you're playing, Rengar or Akali, obviously you're not getting points here. But if you are a pretty heavy mana user, you should want at least 1 point here in Meditation. Right? If you're playing Corki or Ezreal or Victor or something like this. Oh, and by the way, keep in mind, champions like Victor and champions that use Tear of the Goddess have exceptionally large mana pools. You can have 2, sometimes 3,000 mana, which is a very significant increase in the amount of mana you're actually returning here. Especially when you consider an item like Muramana or an item like Seraph's Embrace scales based on how much mana you have at the time. And if you deplete your mana pool and you get 100 mana back, you've significantly increased the amount of damage you're getting out of Muramana or the amount of shielding you're getting out of a Seraph's Embrace. If you're playing support, you are almost always 5-pointing this. Now, why is that? Well, because supports are not going to buy almost any good mana regen items. If you're playing a tank, you just don't care about Merciless. If you're playing Lulu or Janna or Soraka, you just don't care about Merciless. If you're playing Zyra, Brand, it's up for debate. And to be honest, I think you can, over the course of playing some games, say, you know what? Because right now when I play Zyra, I put 5 points in Meditation. Because I know that when I'm playing Zyra, I'm mostly hitting full health champions. right? I'm trying to poke you out of lane. And when you're at 1/3 health, if you stay in lane, you're going to die because we're going to tower dive you. If you're staying in lane at 1/3 health, Merciless is not the reason you're going to get killed. The Lee Sin who comes through your tri-brush is the reason you're going to get killed. The Sejuani who ult flashes you over the wall is the reason you're going to get killed. The LeBlanc who roams down is the reason you're going to be killed. Merciless will not do a lot in that case. But if I have practically infinite mana from 5 points in meditation, I can summon plants all the time. Do not underestimate meditation. It is a very good keystone mastery. You're going to do the math at one point and be like, it's going to give me 20 mana over the course of this minute. And I'd be like, that's really good. And that's what my answer to you is 20 mana in a minute is actually pretty good. And Merciless is just not on all that often. Okay, let's talk about Runic Affinity. Buffs from neutral monsters last 15% longer. Let's talk about Secret Stash. Your potions and elixirs last 10% longer. Also, your health potions are replaced by biscuits and restore 15 health and 15 mana instantly on use. And let's talk about Assassin. Deal 2% increased damage to champions when no allied champions are nearby. Well, this is interesting. Obviously, if you are a duo laner or a jungler, you should never, in really any circumstance, also or a tank top laner, well, that's debatable. If you're a jungler or a duo laner, you should not, under really any circumstances, run Assassin. It's dumb, because anytime you are fighting enemy champions, you are probably near an allied champion. Now, if you're playing mid lane or top lane, you're fighting enemy champions a lot while you're alone. And this has a lot more value, of course. Now, I want you to realize that, for example, the numbers on Assassin is only 2%, and something like Battle Trance is very frequently more than 2% when fighting enemy champions. And okay, it has its own condition of being in combat for a while, but Assassin has its own condition of not being near any teammates. Assassin is actually not insane. For the mid laners and top laners who might use it, it's good. It's helpful. It will help you duel. And generally speaking, I think it is often worth bringing. Now, I should note, very, very few professional mid laners run this mastery. They almost all run Secret Stash or Runic Affinity. Runic Affinity, I think, should only ever be gotten on mid laners or junglers. And we already know junglers are not running Assassin, so junglers are choosing between Runic Affinity, which is quite good, and Secret Stash, which is pretty good. But the thing is, and the reason I think professional mid laners run Secret Stash is it's just very risk averse. It will give you the bonuses. And if you're support, by the way, 100% of the time. AD carry, 100% of the time. Top laner, Secret Stash or Assassin, debatable. Mid laner, all three debatable. Jungler, Secret Stash, Runic Affinity, debatable. But for a mid laner, you have guaranteed health. You have guaranteed bonus health. And as a mid laner, it is really important that you are able to stay in lane and survive and not be pushed out. You're getting 15 health immediately on use, and by a health potion lasting 10% longer, you're getting another 15 health by the end of the potion. So if you come in a lane with a Doran's Ring and 2 health potions, that is 60 extra health that you would not have gotten anywhere else. And keep in mind, professional mid laners say, yeah, for 2 potions, 60 bonus health is way better than a 2% damage amp for like 90% of the laning phase. Professional mid laners are making that option. They're making that choice already. And so when we talked about using vampirism earlier and the, 20, 30 health it's going to give you over the course of a laning phase, keep in mind mid laners are already making the choice to get 30 to 60 health in the laning phase. So just sort of realize how much people are actually valuing this kind of buff when they could have longer blue buffs and instead are very often going Secret Stash. Now, I think you can still make the choice, and I don't think any of these are objectively wrong if you're playing mid lane. And, Assassin versus Stash, I don't think is ever objectively wrong if you're playing top lane. I think if you're playing something like Singed, you're not really fighting champions. Well, your damage to champions might not be super relevant because You're almost always fighting minions instead. It's up to you, though. I don't really want to push on this. But just kind of understand the differences here. Either way, none of these are so incredible that you're like in love with getting 6 points cunning, because none of these are really that substantial. They all feel, in my opinion, a little bit weak, and are carried by the fact that some of these are insane. Right? This is an auto-include for supports. This is almost an auto-include for junglers. And you've got some of the very best keystones in the game down here. So Savagery is obvious. Single target attacks and single target spells. Deal 5 bonus damage to minions and monsters. This helps you clear the jungle, which means if you're a jungler, you've got to convince me really hard that you don't want Savagery and instead want Wanderer. Because anything that helps you clear the jungle faster is very, 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 very good. Clearing the jungle faster is like 90% of what you do if you're a jungler. It is very important that you embrace that strength and push for it as hard as you can. Supports obviously do not care about Savagery. What about Wanderer? Up to 3% movement speed out of combat. Feels pretty good. Now, to be fair, this is debatable for professional players. I think if you're playing support, obviously you're doing this. If you're playing jungle, obviously it's Savagery. If you're playing AD carry, in my opinion, I think it's obviously Savagery. The only case you could make for not doing it is maybe if you really love playing Twitch and you really want to make those roam plays, then I can see it. But I don't love it. So we're talking now about basically mid lane and top lane. And I've seen both. I've seen both options. Someone in the chat asked about Hecarim. I think Savagery is still significantly better for Hecarim. Single target damage is still a requirement of his. Hecarim's clear is sometimes dangerous. And keep in mind, as soon as you enter combat with Wanderer, it is out of combat movement speed. As soon as anyone deals damage to you or you deal damage to anyone, this falls off. Meaning when you charge into a lane with E, and you're raring to go with your bonus move speed and bonus attack damage, as soon as a minion attacks you, you've lost the move speed and the damage. Hecarim will not get more than a single auto attack out of this, at best. And even then, you're hurting your jungle clear to do so. I think it's very suspect if you make this choice. So we talk about Wanderer versus Savagery in solo lanes. I think in the top lane, it's pretty easy to go for Savagery, although it's debatable. Because, you know, last hit minion's better. Why not? You're not getting a lot of attack damage. I've seen several mid laners, professional mid laners. The most notable example I can think of right now that I know for sure does this is Pobelter, who runs this mastery specifically I've seen on Lux. The general thought being, if your champion is already good at clearing minion waves away, if you can already kill minions and you're playing the lane, why bother taking anything else? Right? If you're playing Lux or Victor or something who's very, very good at killing minions off regardless and doesn't need the help, then Savagery has almost no value, and almost no matter what you value Wanderer as, still probably better than Savagery. Now, I actually recommend for, honestly, pretty much any sort of sub-pro or sub-challenger level, you probably just stick with Savagery. It just helps you last hit. Like, it's just helpful. And yeah, there may be scenarios in which Wanderer gets you to the bot lane in time and you get a kill and the big play happens and congratulations, good for you. And there are cases where that's going to be true for you, and that is factually accurate. I just think it's much more likely when you're playing mid-Lux and you've got 63 attack damage that doing 68 instead is going to help you get extra minion kills. And the minion CS that you get that you would have missed otherwise is going to make it worth going Savagery. Now, that's my opinion. You don't have to take it. That's how I feel about that.